Hello, SHA community. Your words invoke form within you. When we speak words, we are using sound connected to the foundation of creation, to our base chakra. When we use our voice, we are extending this voice from our place of survival and grounding, our connection to our human experience in a very anchored way. When you speak your words, you are invoking the form of these words within you. And these forms that are expressing themselves are being tested in your day-to-day life experience, whether they're true for you or not. We often don't realize that we have so much power in our words, in our sound, in the thunder of our beingness, in which is expressed as words or as language. When we work with sound, we are working with form. We're working with creation. We are extending this creation from our inner world into our outer world. And we are creating a bridge for other people, for ourselves to meet us in. We are often tested in this space of formation. When we speak words, we are invoking the form within us, and therefore it is being tested within us before it comes into the outer world as a full extension of our being. Whether something is true for us or false for us, we soon feel out often after we speak our words. There are so many situations in which we may have spoken our truth in that moment, or what we perceived to be our truth, and that truth is tested within us through speaking those words, and then we reevaluate what that means and why we may actually feel a deeper truth coming forward. That when we speak our words, they are creating and invoking form within us, and this form must be tested as part of creation. It must be tested within us to know whether this is our truth or if this is not our truth. Have you ever been in situations where you have spoken something and realized after, that isn't actually how I feel about it? That was maybe what my parent used to say, and it came out of your mouth as if it was an absolute truth in that moment. And in hindsight, you realize, hey, actually, I don't feel that way, and that isn't actually my truth, and I'm ready to shift that. Language that is expressed from sound gives us the opportunity to test out our anchoring, our foundational anchoring, a way in which we are choosing to live in the world in a very present, committed way. And through our words, we are working these things out. We are deciding to build certain blocks that build a certain type of picture or reality. That is not to say that you can't learn through this process. You are here to learn through this process. If something isn't true for you and you have spoken it, you can reform it. You can transform that. You can shift that. You can reevaluate. You can update that. You can't necessarily take it back in terms of the way in which it was said, but you can build upon it or release the need to carry that as a belief or a thought process any further. And this process of reformation through our recognition of the power of sound that we have as creators is so important and can be often misunderstood. Communication is made up of sound and silence. Sound is what creates form, and the silence is what holds that form. We can't have one without the other within our human experience. To recognize where we are out of balance, looking at where are we putting a lot of energy? Are we speaking too much? Are we continually speaking things and not learning how to find that sense of peace and stability and comfort within our own temple of being? These are questions that we can ask ourselves, every week or every few days. How am I going? Am I feeling imbalanced? Am I giving too much externally? Am I speaking too much? Am I needing other people's confirmation of this form that I'm creating to a level where there's a codependency, which comes back to survival? Are we using words as a way of surviving? Are we using silence as a way of surviving? Recognizing that connection within the foundation of our being and how that is expressed in sound. If you think about even when we, look at things like PTSD, there's fight, flight, and if something is happening to you immediately in that moment that you have no control of, your natural response might be to go into a scream. You think about how connected the voice is to the base chakra and how important that connection is to recognize. Are we, and also in terms of being silent, are we shutting ourselves down? Are we in the flight mode where we shut down, or the fight mode where we scream? Those are in more extreme examples, but they're good examples in terms of understanding how our words invoke form within us. And the form within us must be tested as part of our creational responsibility. That it's not that you have to have everything perfectly said when you say it. It's that you have to be so aware of what you're saying and recognize and figure out whether there is an absolute truth within what you are saying for you. And that you have the opportunity to recontract in any given moment what that is for you when you have those realizations or that recognition of a truth or an untruth. When we are in a very grounded, self-aware space, when we speak our words, they tend to come across very clearly. They come across in an attunement to the environment that we're in and to the situation that we're in. When we are not grounded, when we are not connected to our true, human experience, I have two minds about it. There's, on one hand, there is this experience that sometimes being ungrounded allows us to express things that we didn't know were there. So the unconscious. And that can be a really powerful thing. So for example, doing journaling or writing where you've got this complete freedom to be able to express what you need to express and then nut things out and figure things out from that. That can be a very powerful process. But if you're just journaling in front of a group of people and you're opening yourself up to situations, you have to be aware that that is creating form, and that form might not be necessarily suited to that specific group of people or that specific energy or the way in which people are perceiving it. And if it hasn't been tested within you as a part of that process, going into a group situation might actually really challenge you or bring up a lot of trauma. So there's such a complexity in terms of sound. When we understand that sound is creating form, and the way in which we perceive sound based on how we've learnt to communicate through language, that adds another series of layers of perspectives to what that sound means. And then when we're dealing with group situations where we're communicating in and amongst other people's perspectives, that can then also be interpreted in a whole nother level of different variations. You see how powerful our words are and how much it trickles into all these different perspectives, and how it can actually challenge and bring about these different forms and start to actually shift one's collective reality. When we use our words, we are invoking form within us. This form must be tested. I've said this before and I'm saying it again, so it makes sense within your collective awareness. It must be tested because in terms of our human experience, it must be tested for whether it is a truth or it is an illusion, and whether it is a grounded truth or whether it is maybe a spiritual truth, depending on what connection you have at any given moment, what vibrational resonance you're operating at what point you are expressing oneself in whatever environment is, that you happen to be in terms of this sound, how it will be received, how it will be interpreted. When we speak word and that sound comes through, that sound creates form. That form must be tested in truth or illusion, then reevaluated often throughout our experience, and figuring out how do we actually fully speak from a space where we are very, very clear in who we are, and it comes through as a natural, authentic expression. There are many different aspects of truth. You could have an opinion which you perceive to be a truth for you, but it isn't necessarily a universal truth. It's a perspective, it's unique to your human experience. Then there are sort of certain aspects where we speak from more of a universal truth, universal awareness, universal truth, and it could be relative to everyone, even if they don't realize it. Then we also have what's relative to a certain situation or circumstance, and how that sound or those words will create form within that environment. Recognizing what we are speaking and how we are creating form, recognizing the responsibility of that form, that it must be tested within us, that we must use our awareness to evaluate and be present within that expression. So we are learning how to be more developed, more attuned, more self-aware in terms of our creation, because we are creators in the likeness of creation and the creator. And when we are creators, we are also uncreators. We are here in the physical material plane. What we create, we must also uncreate. When they talk a lot about Saturn as a planetary energy, what is brought forth must be redeemed, or must be, completed on some level. And when we speak, we're actually creating a reality and form that must be tested for it to manifest into our reality, into our realm, because we are the overseers of our kingdoms, in the kingdom of God or in the kingdom of Great Spirit. And our responsibility, our sovereign responsibility, is continually testing our own self-awareness and being reflective in terms of our communication, recognizing how important it is to balance out words and silence. That if you are speaking a lot over a period of time, how important it is to balance that out with that silence, to give yourself the space to calm everything down and slow everything down and let that form settle. Almost like when you see a lake, if there's so much stirring on the lake, there's no clear reflection of what is all around this lake. And part of that communication stirs things up. It starts to really, create shape, create form. And then recognizing the responsibility of how to close that down and bring that sense of calmness to allow that lake to then completely still and reflect back the environment. And that in itself will allow one to recognize what that truth truly is after it is cooled or settled down, after it is calmed. our words invoke form within us, and this form must be tested in the form of truth or illusion. It is our responsibility to oversee this process and recognize where illusion exists within our being and within our perceptions and rectify. We have the responsibility to complete some of these cycles in which might have been going back generations. These phrases, these words, these sounds, some of these belief systems aren't ours, but are embodied within us through our lineage, which goes back hundreds of generations. And while it may be very different in this modern time versus where it was, it's still traveling and creating form or illusions that have been manifested in the form of obstacles, which are untruths in one's life, or in, you know, a whole generational perspective of your genealogies, you know, mentality, the way in which you respond to your circumstances. You might not even realize the way in which you are responding is a residual pattern of form that has been created eons ago. The evaluation of this form through listening deeply to the words that we speak, through recognizing the form that is being tested within us as a truth or an illusion, and finding that stability and centeredness to recognize how we feel in the physical realm in a very anchored way reflects how we communicate in the world, how we express that security, that survival, that sense of stability, and how we actually start to create form from these words. We're actually creating either more instability or more stability, depending on the belief systems and the perspectives that are intertwined within this whole process of communication. Thank you.